Joining us now with reaction, former CIA director, former Secretary of State, Fox News contributor, Mike Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, I saw your comments earlier. You think this is going to be longer than maybe a lot of people think. I think you might be right. The one thing that I am reminded of as Israel begins this ground incursion, it will be very difficult. If it's a two-front war, it'll be more difficult. Rockets from Syria makes it more difficult. Rockets from the Houthis out of Yemen, that makes it more difficult. Iran's threat and saber-rattling that they will get into this makes it more difficult. The 9/11 Commission said they were at war with us and we were not at war with them. Israel has literally been taking in tens and tens of thousands of rockets annually into their border cities. They similarly have watched international aid money be spent on this network of tunnels. Isn't it clear enough, even before October 7th, that there has been a war being waged against Israel, and this is now Israel's opportunity to end that war forever? You can no longer have Hamas in the south, Hezbollah in the north without massive consequences. Is this their opportunity to fight back and win?
Sean, it is absolutely necessary that Israel do precisely what we're seeing begin this evening. That is the destruction of both the infrastructure and the leadership of a terrorist organization sitting on their border. And your points tonight have been pretty clear. They have been at war not only with Israel, but they've been firing missiles into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They've been conducting terror attacks around the world. And we should not forget that in spite of the fact that the Biden administration denies it, it was Iran that killed Americans on October 7th, right? There were several dozen Americans, blue passport holders, that were killed that day, and there are American hostages still being held by them. I don't think the Biden administration has completely taken on board that this isn't just about some faraway place. And demanding a humanitarian pause is not going to solve the problem of these barbaric, evil actors who want to destroy Israel, the rightful homeland of the Jewish people, and are coming for the rest of the world as well.
Okay, so, I've been in these tunnels, and we'll show video again tonight. We've been showing it to our audience. And I got to tell you, it's not just the tunnel I was in. Mr. Secretary, you know all about them. I went down nearly 100 feet underground. I went inside the tunnels. It's a sophisticated bit of architecture, if you will. It's terror architecture, but it is what it is. And only designed using international aid money, including our tax dollars. But the network is all throughout Gaza, even under the largest hospital in Gaza. I would have to think one of the top goals here is to destroy the entire network of tunnels. Secondly, Hamas's ability to fire rockets whenever they want using human shields in schools and hospitals, that launching area must come to an end. How do they achieve that militarily?
So, Sean, it won't be easy, and it won't be without cost. Two things I think have to happen. First, I think they've done some good work to prepare the battlefield, but it's an urban fighting environment. I think that'll be pretty difficult for them. But they have the capability. They've been watching this for years. They have a good piece of this mapped, I suspect. But the second thing that has to happen, really, the second two pieces. First, we cannot have the world demanding that they stop. That political pressure on them, demanding that they pull back when we have difficult days there, will put enormous stress not only on the political leadership, but the military leadership as well. And second, and this is a role that is really important for the United States, we have to establish deterrence from these other fronts. We have to communicate to the Islamic Republic of Iran that if you open another front, the cost isn't going to be imposed on somebody sitting in Syria or some knucklehead sitting in the desert in Iraq. It's going to be imposed on the Iranian leadership. If we don't get that right, if the costs aren't imposed on the Iranian leadership itself, then you're right, Sean, you'll have the West Bank begin to put pressure on Israel from that direction, from the north. You'll see it all across the region. There's nothing humanitarian about giving the Iranians the opportunity to continue their terror campaign. We've got to end this. We have the capacity to push back. We've done it before. We did it in the Soleimani strike. America did it in 1988 with Praying Mantis. We can reestablish deterrence. It simply takes American leadership to do so, Sean.
Let me ask you about strategy and war. And then we're going to have some other news in a second here. And that is, if you go back to Iraq, we did not have the modern, sophisticated weaponry that has since been developed. The way, for example, you were able to track down Soleimani and take him out on that tarmac is a case of American military genius. You pinpoint accuracy, took him out on the tarmac. You could have taken him out of the air. There would have been collateral damage, but you didn't do it that way. You waited till he was the target. His convoy was the target. Similarly, that's how you beat the caliphate. If Israel knows the exact location of this terror tunnel network, why not use modern, sophisticated military technology and bomb it out of existence rather than a long, protracted ground war using more old-fashioned military methods? Am I wrong in thinking that you could not bomb out the terror tunnel network?
Sean, I'll leave to people who know more about the capabilities than I do, but I'm going to guess they're going to use every tool available. We're seeing one piece of that, or maybe two pieces, right? We're seeing the air bombardment. We're seeing the artillery that's preparing the battlefield. Now we're seeing the armored vehicles and personnel carriers moving into the Gaza Strip. My guess is that they're not only using things we can see, but tools that are clandestine, tools that are going to try to get at that very network. Make no mistake about it, I am convinced Israel is going to do this in a way that minimizes both the risk to civilians in Gaza, the risk to the hostages there, which is very much in the front of our minds and theirs and the families of those hostages, but as well as protecting their own soldiers and sailors. I'm convinced Israel will conduct a military campaign here that represents modern warfare. I don't know that we'll get a chance to see it all, but Israel has the capacity to do this as long as we don't stop them. And we continue to help them make sure that they can do this in Gaza without having to open up other fronts as well. It's possible to do, Sean.
All right, let me ask you this. Well, I'll tell you what, we got to get right back to you, Mr. Secretary. We have a Fox News alert. This is just breaking. Fox News has now confirmed that the suspect in the main mass shooting, Robert Card, has been found dead. We're going to have a lot more on this later in the show. But before we get back to it, let me give you a few of the details. They're a little sketchy at this time. All 18 victims have now been identified by authorities. The shelter-in-place order, as everyone knows, has been lifted. Among them was a married couple in their 70s, a father and his 14-year-old son, 4 adults associated with the Maine Educational Center for the Deaf. A gun, note, cell phone belonging to the suspect found earlier today by the police. Divers, sonar equipment searched the river near where the suspect's car was found abandoned Wednesday night, near where apparently he had a boat. And a press conference now will be held, I guess, sometime early tomorrow morning and going forward. Anyway, police, to their credit, working through the many, many hundreds of tips from people around them. But let me repeat, the suspect in this main shooting has now been confirmed as dead. We'll have more details to follow throughout the night. Authorities, by the way, anyway, let me bring in former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Now, I want to ask you this, Mr. Secretary, because I think this is important. If some of this can be used with modern military technology and weaponry, and we have a two-front war, I think Israel is capable. They plan for a two-front war every time. They've handled it historically, 48, 67, 73. They're no stranger to having a lot of hostile countries surrounding them. So my next question to you is, if it becomes bigger than that, if Syria keeps launching missiles, the Houthis out of Yemen keep firing missiles, and Iran continues to saber rattle and maybe itself gets involved, at that point, I would argue all bets are off. If I'm right, how would you define all bets are off?
Sean, I think that's right. I think that would fundamentally change the nature of what's taken place here, in spite of the fact they've already killed Americans. Look, it would require us to do what I think President Biden has prepared for by moving the resources and assets into the theater, but we need to be prepared to use it. You know, Sean, I remember being in the Situation Room. I remember conversations where we were trying to map out how it is you restore deterrence when Iran is on the march. Now the fact that Hamas is meeting with Russian leadership makes it even more complicated. But we know how to restore deterrence. We know the tools. We have plenty of resources. We have a very capable set of intelligence collection capabilities and covert operations. We have all of the things that America can bring to bear that I am confident that can convince the Ayatollah and President Raisi that it's not worth the candle, that in fact they have played their hand too strongly and they need to back off. That's the role America can play, that frankly only America can play. And to the extent we end up with a very complex situation which threatens our ally, our partner, the nation of Israel, we need to bring all of that American power to bear.
All right, Secretary Pompeo, you're going to stay with us. We will get back to you throughout the evening tonight. Thank you.